It's insane that you can convince yourself that that's okay to feel that way and that's a normal thing. One thing about quitting, to me, it's all about your mental clarity when you're quitting and staying quit, because a lot of people quit is staying quit. That is a big problem. And so it's about knowing that this is a positive change. Like, people always talk about white knuckling it and just craving for the next drink. And, it starts out difficult, like that's expected, but it gets better. Like, that will pass. You are changing your life for the better, and like looking at your life in like a 30-year span. Just imagine where you'd be if you continued drinking versus quitting drinking, and you know that you're making the right decision.
Hi, and welcome to the Stethoscope to Swaddles podcast, episode number 94. Today, I am joined by a very, very, very special CRNA mom. Her name is Amanda, and she shares with us her incredible journey of sobriety. She has just published her first book. It's called Pour It Out, A Guide to Lasting Sobriety That Works. One of the amazing things about Amanda, one, she is a stepmom of one and soon to be mommy of a baby girl. In her journey, she decided that she was going to normalize the conversation around alcohol use disorder. And in doing so, she went through the process herself, and we talk a lot about how we sometimes have normalized in society, drinking to cope with motherhood, drinking to cope with marriage, parenting. It's such a sober discussion, no pun intended, on the journey and how to stop drinking for good. I've been keeping this a secret for a while. Her book is now available on Amazon as of December 3rd, 2022. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it via Kindle or paperback. I promise you, she has so much wealth of information to share. She is so honest in her journey, and she is just a breath of fresh air. Southern mama. I just loved talking to her. Just a little backstory. I had posted something in one of the groups I'm in about some statistics I read about drinking during the pandemic, and one of the things that I thought was interesting was that the article was talking about just the rise of alcoholism in women during the pandemic. And when I posted this, I got some feedback from a lot of women. And Amanda was one of the first people who reached out to me directly. And she's like, listen, I have a story to tell. And so we recorded this episode before the publication date, obviously, but I wanted you to have it so that I wouldn't keep you waiting for the actual book. And so without further ado, welcome Amanda Linton.
Hey, Mama. You deserve a life free of overwhelm and burnout. Welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. I'm your host, life and mindset coach, Shiro Bergbauer. I'm also a wife, mom, and CRNA. This is the podcast for high-achieving mamas in medicine like you and I. Together, we'll learn how to navigate the ups and downs of working motherhood. If you're looking to thrive in your relationships and overcome overwhelm in your motherhood, marriage, and medicine, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast.
All right, Amanda, welcome to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. I'm so excited to have you. We've been connected for almost a year now. I'm not going to say the story of how we met. So I want you to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. What do you do? A little bit about your family. Just introduce us to Amanda.
Okay, well, hi, Shiro. I'm so glad I'm here, and I am Amanda Linton. I grew up in a small rural town in Georgia, in the middle of nowhere. I went to school to become an ICU nurse, and I worked as an ICU nurse for about 3 years. Then I went along into graduate school to become a nurse anesthetist. So I've been a nurse anesthetist now for 6 years. I really couldn't imagine my life taking a different path than that. So I'm very happy with where I've ended up. I'm married to the love of my life, and I have a 13-year-old stepson who keeps us very busy.
Yeah.
We're also about to have our first child together in December, so we are very excited about that.
Okay,
And
I'm just clutching my imaginary pearls because that one was like unexpected. Well, congratulations.
yes,
Well,
thank
because I
you
can
so
only
much.
see the top of your torso either. So,
Yes. There's
yes.
a big belly under here.
Congratulations,
Yes.
Amanda. So exciting. Do you know what you're having or is it a surprise?
A little girl.
Oh my gosh, the
Yes.
best, the
Yes.
best. Congratulations.
Yeah, we are already oogling in over her, so we are very excited.
Awesome. I'm excited for you.
I also just wrote my first book titled Pour It Out, A Guide to Lasting Sobriety That Works. This has been a passion project of mine as alcohol had a hold of me for much of my life. When I was finally able to free myself of that demon, I really wanted to share my story for other people that might be struggling and going through alcoholism.
Perfect. So I am so glad you reached out to me when you did. I think it's probably over a year ago. I was reading an article about the increase in alcoholism in women, especially during the pandemic. It just struck me like, oh my gosh, and I think when in mom culture, there's a couple of things that are such a big pet peeve of mine. The first one is wine o'clock
Oh,
or
and
the
then
idea.
mommy juice.
Yes,
Oh,
mommy
it's mommy
juice.
juice. Yes.
Mommy juice, wine o'clock. Because I get the spirit in which it begins, but then it normalizes the idea of surviving motherhood and life with alcohol. And as a child of a person who my dad drank a lot when I was little, I'm like, there is no glamour in having a drunk parent. There is no glamour in your parent forgetting to pick you up from school because they drank too much. And, I think with social media, we've kind of normalized the idea of alcohol, especially wine, to survive the holidays, to survive, marriage situations. And one of the reasons I was very clear on that post that I made was we've got to normalize experiencing life without alcohol, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've also got to normalize people who are not drinking anymore. And one
Right.
of the things is like when I go to a restaurant, my husband and I, we either drink or we don't. It doesn't like, but for the most part, like we'll ask for, water. And I just find it so interesting when the waiters look at you like, are you an alcoholic? Like, why are you not
Mm-hmm.
drinking?
Yes.
And it's almost like reverse shame when you're not drinking versus when you're
Mm-hmm.
drinking. And so I was so touched by your story, which we're going to talk a lot about in this podcast. But I was so touched, one, by your openness and your willingness to come out with your story, knowing that it would create conversations. And I think
Mm-hmm.
those conversations are healing and connecting conversations. So thank you for your vulnerability and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for letting me be here. I mean, um, society really does endorse and promote alcoholism on so many levels. I mean, I've been, patronized and mocked for not drinking. And so you learn to cope with that in society because you can't change society in a day.
Yeah.
But my goal is to let people know it's okay not to drink. And I want to show them alcohol is a legal addictive drug. It's
Mm.
legal, addictive, and it's a drug. So it's harmful and it has no benefits to our well being. Some rich guy decided that it was okay to be developed and taxed worldwide. So when people quit drinking because they develop an addiction to the drug, we are questioned, looked down upon, and mocked. When anybody says they quit smoking cigarettes, people are like, oh, congratulations. Like, so
Yeah.
proud of you. But when you quit drinking, they're like, oh, you have a problem. Like,
Mm.
oh, but the drug did what it was supposed to do. And there are more people that are more susceptible to addiction due to genetic factors and environmental factors. So there are some people that can drink, and then there's some people that cannot drink. So I just put myself in the category of I cannot drink, and I keep it simple.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm,
Absolutely.
for sure.
So let's go back a little bit before we even get to the factors. How did you come to, I guess, the realization like, hey, I think I have a problem and that problem is alcohol? How do you get there?
Well, so I questioned my relationship with alcohol for a very long time. It would come in phases, really. Some months I would wonder if I needed to cut down and evaluate decisions that I would make while I was drinking. And then the next month I would just not bat an eye at it and just let myself drink however much I wanted. It was a real dangerous cycle, really, because I was unable to see what alcohol was actively doing to my state of mind, to my personality, to my happiness. I couldn't see how dependent I was becoming on it for a very long time, especially considering how acceptable it is in society. I come home, I get a call, hey, let's go out for afternoon drinks. Okay, that's perfect. I'm just like everybody else, is what I was taught to think. I would go have drinks with friends. That's normal. Then weekend would come, a football game would come on. Everybody drinks on the weekends. So it really took an internal glimpse at myself to realize that alcohol was taking over my mind. Thankfully, I didn't let it progress to end stages of alcoholism, which is where that's the danger that lies here of people and not realizing that that's the path they're going down, because it's a progressive disease. It doesn't, happen in a day. It happens over years and decades. Thankfully, when I realized finally that I was dependent on it, I was able to get up my willpower and just go headstrong and say, I'm never drinking again.
Yeah.
That was mine.
And how was that? Like when you wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, that's it, I'm done. Where do you go next? Because you're surrounded with alcohol, right? Like I'm sure if your husband drinks, if your friends drink, you're not going to be like, sorry, I don't drink anymore. Everybody stop drinking.
Right. When I had finally gotten to that, I was in a mentally dark place. If you ask anybody I know around me, no one would say I was an alcoholic. Everyone would be like, oh, no, she's not an alcoholic. No, she's normal. No. It was an internal struggle at that point. No one really could see it yet. And when I finally quit, I had told myself that I was willing to lose everything that I had done in life so far to get sober.
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
I was willing to, walk away from my jobs, my friends, my husband. It became my number one priority. And I honestly didn't feel deserving of love anymore, in a sense of being that mentally down, knowing you're dependent on something like that. It makes you feel alone.
Yeah.
And that the people you love or know won't want you anymore afterward. And so you have to kind of come to terms with the fact that you're not sure how this is going to work out.
Yeah.
And that's the disease.
Uncharted territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you've never lived life without alcohol at that point. And, still being a professional woman in the workplace, like it never affected my daily life in the daytime yet. It was definitely, while drinking, I would make poor decisions, or the next day be in the bed for hungover or something. So still being professional and not losing everything that people classify alcoholics as, like, that is what confused everybody when I quit drinking. They were all like, oh, she's normal. Which, yeah, you're always a normal drinker till you're not.
Yeah.
And so I promise no one ever said they wanted to lose their family or friends or job or become homeless or helpless or helpless. Like they all got that way by continuing to drink.
Absolutely. And I think you pointed out something very interesting, which was like you at that point were willing to lose everything to be free from drinking, right? And I think there's that fear of missing out, right? In society
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, oh, but what am I going to do when I go to social situations? And I think one of the reasons alcohol is kind of hard compared to cigarettes too, even though cigarette quitting smoking is super difficult, right? It's because it's everywhere, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you go to your friend's house and they offer you a glass of wine. You go to a restaurant, they give you the wine menu. Like nobody's shoving cigarettes in your face, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have to go find them. I think alcohol is easier because it finds you. You don't have to go
Mm-hmm.
looking for it. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And then,
Yeah.
I grew up with alcohol in the home as well.
Yeah.
So I had never seen a life lived without alcohol. Like
Wow.
I thought alcohol was just a rite of passage into adulthood. You work
Mm.
hard in the day, you come home, you have your drinks, and then on your days off, you start drinking earlier because it's like a day off. It's just a
Wow.
reward
Yeah.
for your hard work during the week.
Yeah.
And so my whole life I looked to be successful. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be a successful woman. I'm going to take care of myself. And I never looked at drinking as being an issue.
No, because it's
Mm-hmm.
almost so glamorized in our society, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
women walking around with a glass of wine and they look amazing and so it's like you fall in that mold. But one question I'm curious about is what is the emotion that you thought alcohol was going to help you feel? Or what is the emotion you were trying to avoid when you were drinking?
I, I had I think I'm always on. And
Mhm.
so I was always kind of stressed or anxious about something,
Mhm.
or I felt overwhelmed or overworked or tired, just wanted a release or
Release.
a
Yeah.
relief or something in some way. So when, I got home, it was like, oh, I can open the bottle of wine. Oh, the wine is there for you. And as soon as you take that first sip, you feel little chills go over your body before it's even
Mhm.
hit your body yet. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm relieved. Oh, it worked. Even
Yeah.
though it's really not working.
No,
That's
it's
just
not. Because 1 hour later, you're
mm-hmm,
starting to feel if you get to the point where you start to get tipsy,
mm-hmm.
in my mind, like I think when I drink and I start to feel tipsy, I get very paranoid because I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, one more sip might lead me to drunk, right? So then I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm,
drink some water. So I feel like even though I've never experienced like the shame and all of that, it's like
mm-hmm.
you don't feel that feeling long enough. And, I was being interviewed on a podcast this week, and the guy was asking me questions about my coaching. And I was saying how it's incredible to me how we, like, we are, doctorate prepared, master's prepared individuals, and we have not come to understand our emotions, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
our brains are like, give me dopamine, give me dopamine. I've had a bad day at work. The surgeon was yelling and the schedule was terrible and this happened. And it's like your brain's like, don't worry. If we just wait long enough, we can go home and drink. Right. And
Right.
then you come home and you give it dopamine. The problem with our brain and dopamine is that it's like this thirsty, like you can't quench the thirst of dopamine. And so we
Mm-hmm.
give it alcohol and we get that dopamine hit. And then the brain's like, give me more
Mm-hmm.
because that felt
Oh
so
yeah.
good.
Well, so, in as you progress with alcoholism and dependency, now they term it alcohol use disorder. As you progress with that, the normal things in life that make you happy no longer release that dopamine and make you happy anymore.
Yeah.
So it gets worse, as the disease progresses. And so when you used to hear your newborn baby cry or giggle, you wouldn't release dopamine anymore because you're so reliant on that alcohol to release
Exactly.
dopamine. People don't realize that when they're drinking that, out with their friends, that's what they're doing to their mind.
Yeah. And you know what's
Mm-hmm.
crazy, right? Like one of the things this year I've spent a lot of time like just understanding mind body connection and the different chemicals we release and we if you think about what we do in anesthesia, right? Like we get to understand all those chemicals. We get to understand norepinephrine. We get to understand epinephrine. We get to understand dopamine. We actually administer those drugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, we have this like intellectual knowledge of those chemicals. Yet those
Mm-hmm.
chemicals are running around our bodies and we've kind of dissociated and we're like, we don't realize we can actually pay attention to those chemicals, right?
Mm.
When your body is telling you, oh, you've had a really bad day at work, you need alcohol, and you don't even have the awareness of, I can get dopamine by going on a walk,
Right.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
can get dopamine by calling my sister. I can get
Right.
dopamine by going to my friend's house and holding their newborn baby, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like
Right.
we compartmentalize that, and it's like, no, the only dopamine we can get is something we ingest.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, over and over, we see it in our own patients. There's exogenous, chemicals that you can give them. So it's like, why do we only think one thing gives you dopamine?
Right. And it's a habit loop that forms.
Yeah.
You get used to doing that. And that's when it gets dangerous because then you've made that habit loop. And so it's no longer a conscious decision to drink, it's a subconscious decision because you're not consciously deciding, okay, I'm going to go on a walk instead. I'm going to do yoga instead.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this instead to get that release. And so the habit loops that form around alcohol is what keeps people sucked in until it's too late.
And you know what's crazy too? It's like we know for sure we're not going to feel great tomorrow after the
Mm-hmm.
drinking, right? And this was actually exemplified for me. My grandmother was actively dying, and my dad called me and he was like, I'm so sad, I am so broken, and I just like want to have a drink. And he's actually done so much better with alcohol and smoking cigarettes. He actually quit smoking cigarettes. He rarely drinks. And I said to him, Dad, you're still gonna feel awful in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Probably worse.
Yeah. And I go,
Yeah.
why don't you just like accept that when your mother is dying, you can feel sadness?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need to erase that? I go, do
Mm-hmm.
you want to be the person who doesn't feel that emotion?
Right.
Because what he was saying to me was, I don't want to feel sad, so I want to drink so I can go to sleep. And what I was saying to him is, why can't you feel sad?
Mm-hmm.
We treat
We're
these,
supposed to go through that emotion.
yeah, like we treat these uncomfortable emotions like the big bad monster,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we do everything in our power to run from it and hide from it. And it's like, wait, what if you just experience it? What if you just experience overwhelm from work and you came home and you were like, of course I'm overwhelmed, right? Or like, let's say something bad happened at work, like a patient outcome, and you came home and you're like, I don't want to feel that. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
we're humans. We're supposed to feel that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And so we get so disconnected from what we actually should be experiencing, the entire kaleidoscope of emotions, to, oh, I can have this one emotion for 30 minutes. And it's like we trade permanent like happiness for temporary like joy of
Right.
alcohol. And it's
Another
sad.
way of describing it is an escape, searching for an escape
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
that, which you have, afterward, then you're dealing with all the repercussions of drinking and alcohol. And then you still have to face that emotion anyway.
Yeah. It's still there. It's still waiting for
Right.
you.
Mm-hmm.
You can't run away from it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So walk me through, you've decided to stop drinking.
Mm-hmm.
How do you then, because here's the thing, before I even get to my question, here's the thing. I feel like, so I've had a couple of friends in my life one of my friends actually just went 100 days and she was so excited and she was telling me about it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed is when we were having the conversation, it was almost like she felt the need to explain that she had quit drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably one of her friends who doesn't, routinely drink. And I thought about it. I was like, wow, like, why is it so, like, almost like she has to tell me about this thing that's happening, even though she knows I would be 100% supportive, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you stop drinking and, you kind of have this urge to tell people about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
How
Yeah.
is that received then when you did that?
Well, so a lot of people were still, reluctant because I think not, I don't think they're looking at it from as my issue at that point. They're looking at them still continuing to drink. And so sometimes, like when you get any sort of reaction to people, you have to remember it's not always about me that they're reacting at, it's about them. And so, because everybody drinking is just so normalized that they're like, okay, why does this person think that they need to quit drinking? I had some people were like, okay, way to go. This is great. Other people were like, oh, why would you do that? Like, what, isn't that boring? I mean, I've had so many reactions. Yes, I've had so many responses but basically I definitely felt the need to explain myself. I kind of felt guilty for having to quit drinking. Like I had to explain as if they, wouldn't understand. And I tried to explain it in a way that they could relate, but a lot of people can't relate. Unless you have the problem, you won't relate.
Well, and what you pointed out is so true because, when people, like when you go tell somebody who is still drinking that I quit drinking, it may like almost trigger shame for them, right? And it's not about them, but it's like, wait, if she's quit drinking, there must be a problem. I have a problem. Why is she telling me? Like, does she think I have a problem, right? Even though you're just having casual conversation. And one of the things that we don't realize is, and I've spent the last year kind of trying to understand that, we have mirror neurons in our brain, right? So when you come to somebody and you say something, they start to mirror what you're saying and they start to look at themselves from that internal lens like, oh, wait, could that mean that I have a problem? It brings up all these emotions for them. It might bring up shame. It might bring up guilt. It might bring up, frustration with themselves. But it's like, it's your journey and you get to walk it in whatever way you want. And I can see how you're so pulled in so many different directions because one, you want to share the great news. And two, sharing the great news may trigger some people, right? And three, sharing the great news might make people question, oh, was this one time when you said this? Were you drunk? So it's a whole bunch of emotions.
And another thing is like that I keep getting asked when I tell people is like, oh, well, are you ever going to drink again? Like, yes, you quit drinking, but are you going to drink again? And a lot of people want, especially if you have a problem with alcohol, it's hard to come to a realization that you're never going to drink again. Like, because your body literally will try to convince you that you don't have a problem with alcohol because since it's such a self-diagnosed disease, it really is. You have to come to terms with the fact that moderation doesn't work for you. Like you'll have people, like I went multiple stints of like 30, 60, 90 days throughout my life without drinking. And I'm like, oh, I finally can control alcohol. I finally beat this thing. Oh, like I proved to myself I don't have to drink. So then you start drinking again. So, because you're always like, okay, I've done it. I've won. I've ruled the substance or whatnot. And so you start drinking again. And then you go through the same pathway of continuing to increase drinking and the need and the dependency. You just go through the same thing over again. So it takes an internal knowing in yourself that you just don't ever want to drink again, to introduce that risk into your life again. So that's important.
Yeah. And I think that has to do with also just when I think about like the mindset, it's like telling yourself what emotion you want to feel on a regular basis, right? And knowing that alcohol gives you the opposite of that and like making that a conversation in your head, like it's not just one time. And, I think about it even in terms of like losing weight and deciding, for example, you don't want to eat flour or sugar. And then you tell yourself, oh, one cookie won't make a difference. And it does make a difference because then you want another cookie. Then you're like, oh, it's just the weekend. I'm just going to keep. And then you get bloated. And you're like, well, I already feel bad. So let me just keep doing it. And it's the same mindset where it's like I will continue to feel bad and if I don't absolve, like if I don't abstain completely. And how do we even balance that out? And like you're saying, like there is no
Hmm.
balance. You're either in it or you're not. And I was thinking about when you said that because I have this friend, and I wouldn't necessarily like call her a friend. Like we went to grad school together, and she went on a journey to quit drinking. And I remember like she would post these pictures. She had the best fun parties, like Halloween parties, like so much fun. And she had shared on Instagram how like for her, she was like gone half the parties, like in her head.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? How could that be even true? Like she seemed to have it all together. She's a CRNA, she's got two kids,
Hmm.
she's raising an amazing family. And then she shares her journey, and it's like, wait, this whole glamorized version of alcoholism is
Hmm.
such a false narrative because here are people sharing their true stories of waking up in the morning
Hmm.
and not knowing who they had cussed out, waking up in the morning and not knowing if they had called an
Right.
ex-boyfriend or like done all these things. So it's not glamorous.
Well, so I had a lot of friends that were like, hey, Amanda, this is even, young college years and all too. But they're like, hey, Amanda, let's go get wasted tonight. Let's go out. And I'm like, okay, let's do that. And then we go out and they have one drink
Yeah.
and tote it around all night. But I'm the one that I literally
Mm-hmm.
would go out and overindulge. And so
Yeah.
it's like a persona that people have. They're like, oh, let's go get drunk. And some people don't even drink.
Yeah.
They just think they're gonna go drink. But then
They
there's
just yeah. They just
yeah,
like
and then there's
they
people
get
like
the little
me
buzz
that
and they're
would
happy.
like take it
Yeah.
literally. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's what we're all doing. And it took me not drinking to realize that
Yeah.
I was drinking a lot more than other people. you know?
Mm.
Mhm.
You're like, wait, my consumption rate is higher. So it's so funny because when you said that about like getting wasted in college, I was telling a girlfriend the other day, she had a party at her house and
Mhm.
they had that blue hypnotic. And I was like, I would never even look at that bottle because I have this like exact memory of being like 22, going out to drink and drinking. I guess they used to call them blue motorcycles. And I don't even know what it was. Definitely a mental motorcycle because I drank so many of them and I remember
Mhm.
like coming home, I couldn't even walk. And I was my ex-boyfriend, like he had like this townhouse and there was like, I'm like lying on the porch and I'm like I can't even walk inside and the sprinklers come on and the water is splashing me and I'm like there's people
Mhm.
that feel this way every day.
Mhm. That's
Every single day. And
right.
they get up
Mhm.
and they grab
That
another bottle, right? And I
mhm.
just am
It's
like,
insane
wow.
that you can convince yourself that that's okay and to feel that way and that's a normal thing. One thing about
Yeah.
quitting too, because we were just talking about it and then we diverted, but I
Yeah.
just to me, it's all about your mental clarity when you're quitting and staying quit because a lot of people quit is staying quit. That is a big
Mm,
problem. And so it's about
yeah.
knowing that this is a positive change. Like people always talk about white knuckling it and just craving for the next drink and just it's very, it starts out difficult. Like that's expected, but it gets better.
Mm,
Like that's
yeah.
just that will pass, like it knowing that you are changing your life for the better and like looking at your life in like a 30-year lifespan. Just imagine where you'd be if you continued drinking versus quitting drinking and that you're making the
Mm,
right decision. It's a like it's a
I
positive
love
change.
that.
Like I'm
Yeah.
definitely one of those that like I don't really reflect in the past very often. I'm more about like, hey, I
Mm,
have this new life ahead of me. I have these new opportunities. I can do this. I can help people. I can do all things, so it's definitely a positive
yeah.
change. So I think if people focused on that more, they wouldn't resort back to drinking, you know?
Got it. So let's talk a little bit about the book. Like what led you to writing the book, and what is the message that you want people to get
Okay,
from the
so,
book?
well, my book is basically a walk through my life with alcohol. It walks you through each stage
Mm-hmm.
of life, like through the view of a successful woman just trying to create the life I always wanted. It showcases all the trouble that
Yeah.
alcohol caused in my life, and all the way to the intense disgrace and havoc it could reach throughout the later stages of life, as I saw with my father. The book is supposed to
Mm.
highlight the fact that alcoholism happens way before we realize it's happening. And that's just what the disease does. I do list, steps necessary to help people get sober and stay sober for years to come.
Mhm.
The reason I wrote the book was because after I quit, I kept telling people, my a little bits and pieces of my story, and I kept getting calls and I kept getting messages for people asking me
Mm.
to help them. And I'm like, wait a second. Like, I didn't realize you were having a problem. Like, oh, you're, a successful person too. Oh, you work with me. Oh, it made me realize that I'm not the only one that feels this way.
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
we only hear about alcoholism once it's destroyed, families and lives. You're like, oh yeah, he fell off the deep end. And I'm like,
Mm.
let's talk about
Mm.
it before then. Let's start self-realizing
Absolutely.
that, we can take control of this thing before your frontal lobe has shrunk into nothing, into where you have to,
Yeah.
go through all of that and all the heartache throughout life. Let's do it now. Let's talk about it now. And that's kind of why I
Yeah.
made the book. Like, I don't want people like me to feel alone.
It's interesting you even talked about the frontal lobe, and even before we get there, like I was talking to somebody whose husband was diagnosed with fatty liver, and she was trying to tell her husband the reason you have fatty liver is alcohol, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's so interesting because we have like this denialism in our society where it can't be alcohol that's causing fatty liver. It's red meat. It's, eating egg yolks. And so it was
Mm-hmm.
like when she was expressing it to him, she was very frustrated. She felt like he had a problem, but it's almost like people want to wait until they have the DTs and they have all these other issues. And this is something we can start working on now. And, like you said
Right.
earlier, you're either in or you're not. Like you either decide you don't want to continue your life with alcohol or you're going to continue your life with alcohol. Like there is no middle. And I think a lot of
Right.
people want that
Mm-hmm.
middle. Like they're like, I don't want to be an alcoholic. I don't want to be abstaining from alcohol. I want to be in the middle. But I think that's where the danger is in the middle.
The danger is there because when you are trying to stay in the middle, when you're trying to moderate, you have to literally be on all the
Mm-hmm.
time. Your willpower has to be there every time
Yeah.
you drink, or you're going, when I have a black and white solution and I'm trying to stay in the gray area, the gray takes a lot more
Yeah.
effort than the
Yeah.
black and white. And so quitting, it's easy for me to now walk past a drink instead of when I was trying to moderate, it was like, oh, maybe I can have 3 drinks
Yeah.
tonight. And then I'll wait a few nights and I'll have 4 more drinks
And
on Friday. So
it's
then
so much
I'm
mental
like,
math.
in,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy
So it takes too much
to
mental
do that.
effort to
Yeah.
sustain that. Yes, you could sustain that for a few weeks or a month or a few months, but then where's your willpower then? Do you have an off day?
It's interesting. My father-in-law, I want to say 2013. My father-in-law is a chef and he owned his own restaurant and he sold the restaurant. And he would be like, sometimes he would spend night. It was like a bar restaurant. So he would spend nights there when he worked late nights. And when he sold the restaurant, he worked for them for a year to kind of help the transition. And then he was done. And so he had all these bottles of
Mm-hmm.
alcohol, a lot of them, right? And by the grace of God, my husband was actually working in Austria at the time. And so he had gone to he was staying with his parents, and he called me and he's like, I seriously think my dad's turning into an alcoholic. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, my father-in-law is like one of calmest, like, and he's like, Shiro, like, he's drinking like so early in the day, like, and they like, and he had
Right.
access, right? It was like, it was all there. And I have to say, I have so much respect for my father-in-law because one, when they pointed it out to him, like, he was very much like, oh yeah, I have a problem. And my husband was like, we're done with this drinking. We
Mm-hmm.
are getting rid of all the alcohol, like moved it out of the house, like, and he completely stopped. And so it's been what, 9 years that he has not had a drink. And now, like, he can actually serve as
Right.
alcohol and not even be inclined to drink it. And I will say, one of the things that I think, especially in Europe, is like for people who just want no longer crave the dopamine hit, but they maybe crave the taste, is like
Mm-hmm.
they have all this alcohol free beer. And you know, so my father-in-law will still sit with us at dinner and
Mm-hmm.
have an
Oh yeah.
alcohol-free beer and be fine, right? But he's not looking for it. Like, he's not
Right.
looking for
And
the drinking.
I'm an advocate for
Yeah.
alcohol-free beer, which it's very controversial in the alcohol-free world. But I think the key
Yeah.
to that is introducing it
Yeah.
early. So you're still getting the flavor, but you're not getting
Mm,
any of the alcohol. So, I mean, you know what I mean? And you can still,
got
it's
it.
helped alcohol-free, the
Yeah.
Heineken 0.0s. They've helped me so much in like social situations because then I don't feel as awkward. Like I don't,
Exactly.
because I mean, you really do have to learn how to
Yeah.
re-socialize. Like my whole brain rewiring had to like change, had to learn how to be social again and make conversations. So anything to kind of help ease me back into those situations, the better. So I think alcohol-free beverages are a great thing in that way.
Yeah, and you know, the funny thing is, like you said, it's a controversial thing, but everybody in whatever community, even in the coaching
Mm-hmm.
community, there's things that are like super controversial, and you just have to
Mm-hmm.
decide like that's your stance, right? Like, I remember when I first came out into like the mom world and I wanted to help moms, like one of the things I was clear about is like I don't
Mm-hmm.
subscribe to hot mess mom culture. And I don't judge
Mm-hmm.
people that do, but it's just not me. Like, I just don't think that motherhood should be
Right.
responsible
Mm-hmm.
for us not taking care of ourselves. Right? So, and so that is
Mm-hmm.
polarizing. Like, it will attract some people and it will repel some people, and it's that's okay. And I think on your journey of advocacy, like, there will be people who will be like, okay, that
Right.
resonates with me, and there are people that will be like, no, I don't agree with that, and that's okay.
And one thing I do say is like when people get sober, they can be sober however they want as long as they're sober. If they want to have a Heineken 0.0,
Yeah.
go ahead. Like they're living their best life now. They're doing what's good for them. Like to me,
Yeah.
that's like you get to decide how you live your sober life, you know? And so
Yeah.
I feel like that is important to not try to fit in a box. You know, you make what works for you. So,
Absolutely. So if you think about your book and the message that you want to send, what is the biggest like take home that you want people who read your book to take with them?
that it is possible, that you don't have to continue to relive those habit loops that you've been stuck in for so long. And you can make new ones and find so much joy in doing so and living the sober life. It is not easy at first, but it is so worth it. My book, it goes down a dark path of getting sober. Then it showcases the fact that I'm happy and I am sober, and I'm 44 months sober now, and I never wish to pick up another drink. Yeah, I feel like I've came out on the other side of this grateful and just excited.
And I love that you took your message. I mean, writing a book is obviously not easy.
It actually, when I said I was going to write a book, I don't think I knew what I really meant. And then when I started writing it, I was like, oh my gosh, like like this is hard.
Yeah, I can imagine like you write and then they like somebody edits it and they're like, "This is trash," and they
Oh yeah,
cross it
yeah.
off, and
So
you're like, "Oh my
yeah,
God,
I'm like,
this is
okay,
my
this cannot
story."
be a word salad. Like I have to make it where
Yeah.
people can understand and resonate with it. And I hope it touches a lot of people and helps a lot of people.
Yeah. And what, I guess, other than the book, like what else are you doing as far as advocacy and supporting people who want to get on the sobriety journey?
Well, so I have a Facebook page
Okay.
and called Sober Squad. And
Okay.
so I'm doing that. That's fun. And so I got people in there that kind of reach out to me a lot. I talk a lot. I kind of, anytime I'm in any social situations, I'm always offered a drink and I always tell them I don't drink. If they ask, I go into it. And the next thing you know, I'll be getting calls, I'll be getting messages, I'll be just helping those that don't know they need help yet. And so
I love that. And we'll link the Sober Squad in the show notes of the
okay,
podcast so people
cool.
know how to find you. Because one thing that you, I think, represent and probably subconsciously or consciously is, I think the image of alcoholism is still that man in the bed, didn't go to work, hasn't shaved, hasn't brushed his teeth, right? And I think to demystify that, to turn it into you, a beautiful professional woman, highly educated, going to work every day,
Right.
like I think that is so important for us to like get out of that stereotype.
And that's why I wanted to write my book too, because I was like, I think it's important for people to see that I'm not the one that has destroyed my life, and I'm not, I'm still in the early stages. And so with alcoholism and AUD, I did want to mention, because it's alcohol use disorder now. I call it alcoholism still, just because that's kind of what I was used to calling it. But alcohol use disorder kind of puts everything meshed together now. Like alcoholism had focused on you can no longer cope with life and function. But with AUD now being the actual definition of it, is like it encompasses the mild, moderate, and severe stages of alcoholism. So that's saying, just even if you're in the mild stage, that's saying, hey, you have a disorder. Like you need to get on this before it continues to the moderate and severe stages. Because so many people think they don't have to do anything until it gets worse. So with the new diagnostic tools, mild is still a disorder.
I was going to say, can you tell us what mild is? Because I think that will be important for anybody curious.
So with the DSM-5 book, they have 11 questions in it. And depending on how many questions you answer yes to, will put you into a mild, moderate, or severe stage. And so there's always going to be a question. I answered 9 out of the 11. Yes.
And you're
and
like,
so
I
no
passed with
matter
flying
what,
colors.
I still question if I had an alcohol problem, because that's what alcoholism does to you. It makes you like, oh, I'm normal. I'm still successful. And so that is how DSM-5 is that's the most used diagnostic tool for alcoholism. Okay, so here are the 11 questions. If you answer yes to 2 to 3 questions, then you have mild alcohol use disorder.
Okay, and what's moderate? How many
Moderate is 4 to 5,
and
severe is 6 or more.
Okay, so let's go through the questions.
So, and that's how, let me just say, this is how alcoholism kind of plays your mind a little bit, like the angel on one shoulder and the demon on the other, because some of these are vague questions. And so you can be like, oh, I'm not that bad. I'll just answer a no. So, that's when I go into saying it's really a self-diagnosed problem, because you have to be mentally clear in your own mind,
like being honest,
being very honest to yourself. Yes. So here are the 11 questions. So in the past year, do you drink more than you mean to? Do you want to stop but can't? Is drinking taking over your life? If you can't drink, are you thinking about drinking? Is your drinking getting in the way of day-to-day activities? Is your drinking getting in the way of your relationships? Are you sitting things out because of alcohol? Are you drinking in risky settings or doing risky things while drinking? Do you know drinking isn't good for you, but you do it anyway? Do you need to drink more than you used to? And do you feel withdrawal symptoms when you stop drinking?
That is so powerful, especially the part is like, do you, do you want to not drink, but you, you do it.
Yep. And
Yeah,
so,
I'll also link that in the show notes so people can look at it and answer it to their most honest feedback,
okay.
right?
That's perfect.
I guess my final question for you is, and maybe we covered most of it, but what is the thing that you want a woman who is like you, who is questioning whether she's an alcoholic, what do you want to tell her? What would you say to her if she's sitting across the table from you?
That she is enough is one. She's enough to get out of this loophole that she's in.
Okay.
If she has a desire to cut back or quit drinking, then she probably already knows she has a deep-seated problem with alcohol, even if she doesn't know it yet. Because most people that don't have a problem with alcohol don't have the desire to quit.
I see.
So if you question that and have a desire or questioning your relationship, then you probably are developing some form of dependency that you need to be self-aware about. It is possible to quit, even though it feels impossible. I mean, I thought it was impossible to go to live a life without alcohol. Like, I just didn't think it was possible. It really is a whole new way of thinking and retraining of the mind. It takes time, but it's worth it. And it's better. Life is better without alcohol. So
yeah, I mean, look at you. You're having a baby.
I'm very excited.
Yeah,
And
you're glowing.
I'm so happy my little girl never has to see mommy any different than being mommy.
Yeah.
Like I get to show that to her. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, she gets to see you at your fullest, most authentic version 24/7.
So I'm drawing a line in the sand there. So no more alcoholics in my family.
Oh my God. Yeah. I bought a sweatshirt and it said it ran in my family until it ran into me.
Yes. Yes, that is
Right.
very
And
true.
yeah. And so you're literally building generational wealth in terms of longevity and health and, mental awareness. And I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, a few things that have basically everything's better since I quit drinking, but I feel better. My moods are better. My productivity is higher. I get better sleep. I'm a better wife and friend and stepmom. I get sick less often. I'm less selfish. Oh, I have no anxiety anymore.
Oh my
Yeah, it's
gosh.
decreased tenfold. So I'm more active. I have more energy. My skin is better. I mean, literally everything's better.
Oh my gosh. I
After
love
quitting.
that. I love that for you. So, is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to touch on for the audience to know about you or to share? I think we answered a lot of questions, but I want to make sure we checked all the boxes and answered all the things. And then, other than the Sober Squad, how else can the audience reach you?
My email is motivatebrands@gmail.com.
Okay.
And my website is motivateandinspire.com. So,
Oh, perfect.
yeah, so we can link those as well.
Absolutely. And then we'll also link the book, which is coming out. We will link that. This episode is actually going to air right after the book comes out. So if you're listening in real time, the book is out. Get it. The link is in the show notes.
I think that's it.
Perfect. Thank you so, so much, Amanda, for sharing your story, for being vulnerable, and most of all, for being an example of what's possible. There's somebody listening today that's going to be like, oh my gosh, that sounds like me. And there's a promise of a better life.
Yes.
And I think sometimes when we make changes in our lives, it's for ourselves and it's for our families and the people we love, but it has far-reaching consequences. And your story and your journey is definitely going to change so many lives. And I'm so grateful that our paths even crossed and you were so open about your story. I think you had just started writing the book. We connected. And so it's been great to like get little updates from you. And now the book's out and it's going to be amazing. I can't wait to hear what like people say about the book and their lives are changing. You're like literally going to birth two babies.
I know. I'm so excited all at the same time.
Yeah, all at the same
And
time. Yeah.
one other thing I wanted to say, which is a quote I go by for those people that are wanting to make the change, but aren't really, they're afraid to dive in or they're not sure if they have a problem with alcohol or not. One thing that I remind myself is that I would rather go through life believing I'm an alcoholic than go through life drunk believing I'm not. You get to choose what path you take. And like the sooner you make the change, the better. Like your life will only get better from it.
Just how you said it, it's like nobody is stuck, right? It takes one decision. You're
That's
one
right.
decision away from not being stuck anymore. And you have exemplified that so much. I think you've just created this hopeful perspective and right, like you're saying, like high achieving professional woman, successful. Like if you can leverage your brain power to achieve the things you have in life, then you can absolutely leverage it to quit drinking.
And you deserve to do it for yourself,
Absolutely.
and for your family,
Absolutely.
like I thought success was, graduating from graduate school and becoming a nurse anesthetist. And then I realized, wow, there's a lot more work I need to do on myself.
Yeah. I talk about this all the time. It's the arrival fallacy. Like, oh, when I arrive there, I'm going to be happy. And then you get there and there's a fresh set of problems there.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming to the podcast. Truly appreciate you sharing your story. And I can't wait to reconnect after the baby gets here and, you're hearing from your readers how the book has changed in their lives. I know it's going to change lives. I absolutely believe it.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing.
Awesome. Well, I hope that you took a lot of notes, learned a lot of things, and are ready to go implement all the things that Amanda talked about. I want to encourage you to grab a copy of this life-changing book, read it, apply it, transform. I talk a lot here about buffering with different things, and alcohol for certain is a buffer for many of us. And I think we need to have more honest conversations about this. We also need to normalize conversations around people who choose not to drink, not really making them feel like there's something wrong with them. So I really, really, really would like to encourage you to get this book. It's a great stocking stuffer. Share it with friends, read it, transform your life. Please reach out to Amanda and share your feedback with her. Let her know how this book has helped you start your own journey. January is coming, and I know for a lot of people, dry January is a thing. But what if you just made it dry 2023 and just made it dry the rest of your life, and that you could cope with life's ups and downs without numbing? That would be incredible. And so we support your journey wherever you are, however you're starting. And I want to especially recognize my beautiful friend. I will not name her, but I want to recognize a friend of mine who has gone through the sobriety journey, and she's been so honest about it. I just want to applaud her. So if you're listening, you know who you are. I am so proud of you. I'm so proud of your vulnerability. I'm so proud of your resilience. And I can only wish you continued sobriety. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk next week. Bye now. I'm Shira Bergbauer, and you've been listening to the Stethoscopes to Swaddles podcast. New episodes are out every Monday. These episodes are created by me, Shira Bergbauer, and produced by Cassidy Mitchell. If you enjoyed this show or found it helpful, please rate it and review us on Apple Podcasts. If the concepts I share on this podcast resonate with you, or you're ready to change your relationships and mindset, I can help you. If you'd like in-depth, personalized support,
I'd love to invite you to apply for my Life and Mindset coaching program. Just imagine you and I every week working together as I teach you the tools to up-level your life. To book your free 1-hour consultation call, go to www.stethoscopestoswaddles.com/consultation. You're doing a great job, Mama. Have a great week. Bye now.